What's going on, guys? It is Laser here with another weekend video analysis. It is Sunday night. Hoping to get this analysis and video up live on YouTube before tomorrow, before things start trading again. I'm here to share with you where I see NIO going into next week. And if you've missed my last week's videos, my last 3 weeks videos, I've nailed the last 3 analyses and have been right and on point. Now, I do want to address a couple of things before we talk about where I see things going into next week. Number one, last week, I said if the top is not in and it decides to push a little bit higher up to 620, then I would see the pullback. I was always calling for that pullback. I just wasn't 100% certain where that top was going to be, but my bias always leaned towards the downside. The reason that my bias leaned towards the downside is because not only did it broke the trend line last week, it never gave us that full test on that very first Fibonacci trend line at 491. And we just so happen to be in the exact same position going into next week. It's really testing our patience, but that is truly the skill and trait that is, in my opinion, one of the hardest traits to build up when you're trading. And I do believe that we will see a continuation in the breakdown in that price into the further Fibonacci trend zones. And the reason, I needed to just drink some water there. I don't want to have to sound like the Sahara Desert. The reason that I see the price coming all the way down to the golden pocket zone is it's NIO. That's just kind of what it does. It gives you those big retraces. But to big picture here, guys, really what you're looking at, just to make it cleaner, this is what I'm seeing here. Look, you got that 1 year downtrend. Price broke up. It's coming down. Okay. Take a look at the price. It's come up. It's coming down. It's making that higher low. And 491 is not that high. Like the first fib trend line is, I mean, maybe. We got to see until it hits there. And that's why I'm not convinced that this dip is reached. And there's the velocity on top of that, which I'm going to analyze now and share with you why I still think there's going to be a downside leading into next week. Now, before I dive into that, I do want to say, just to ease your guys' nerves, I still see this going higher. Sometimes the week-to-week price action is noise. And if you're a trader, which I fully support, is a trader that likes to buy and hold and wait till the price reaches their price targets, sometimes the best way is to ignore the noise and wait until it reaches your first and second price targets. So $8.40, $10. Patience is all it takes. And whatever it happens in the price, that's all noise. In fact, what I think is going to happen is it's going to come down here, and once it's bottoms and it makes that next big move is really going to be, a big, huge oomph move. And in order to kind of get there, and if you want to be riding that, you gotta have that patience. So I do believe it's going to pull back. It's going to come much lower, and part of that is because of the velocity. And it's broken down here. And let's quickly dive in here on the velocity. So again, I'm sharing this with you to let you guys know that I still am bullish long term. My first and second price targets are $8.40, $9.90. And I do even see it the potential. I think there's that gap there around that $12. I think it's very, very, very much possible that it could actually reach those levels. Now, removing that, when you look at the velocity, we're trading below the 200-day moving average, and that's it. And it's that simple. The chart really does explain it. It's literally that simple. The momentum has shifted to the bears. The bulls got exhausted up here, and it's time to come down. And there's also another good reason for it to come down, and I'll tell you why. A good reason why it needs to come down is the institutional investors that want to now get long on NIO. They're going to want to get long at the lowest possible prices. And I'm telling you right now, it hasn't even hit that first fib trend line. If you're an institutional investor, you're not really getting a discount to buy. That's not like until you at least see 494. That's your first real major discount. But again, if you're an institutional investor and you have funds that kind of, help move the price up and down, it's probably in your best interest to try and accumulate shares. Now, when you get gaps, which there are on NIO, a gap at 423, a gap at 417, and as well as a gap at 374. Or no, pardon me, it's at 370. When you have those gaps, it's in your best interest to drive the price down as low as possible if you're an institutional smart investor. I still think that 370 is kind of crazy, but it's not completely out of the question. I think the structure is really going to look like a pullback, and it's going to look something like this. And it's going to start looking bearish, and people are going to start complaining, and people are just going to be whining. But truly, what it is patience is going to be tested. I think volume is going to speak louder when you're going to see it falling on lower volume, and that's really where you're not going to want to get fooled. And I think once it finds that bottom, it's going to kick it into high gear, and that's when it's going to give you that really massive move. Invalidation, and I could be wrong. The reason I'm sharing this is take a peek here. And I wanted to share this, so I'm going to try and wrap this video up here, as I actually don't have too much time to make this video. I promised to make a longer video and do a deeper dive analysis. I apologize. I'll have to save that for another time. For now, I just wanted to kind of just tell you and share with you where I see NIO going into next week. What I see here is on a shorter time frame, like the bigger time frame, and I got to remind you guys this because I know you bulls sometimes you need reassurance sometimes. The bigger time frame is we got that break. And it's pulling back, so of course it's broke up and it's coming down, right? That's the bigger time frame. But on that smaller time frame, it's broken down, right? And that's your pullback. Sorry, it's broken down. That was your pullback, and it's pretty bearish. I think going into next week, the price will go lower. And I do expect it to kind of come towards that gap fill. I'm not telling you guys to sell your shares and buy it lower. I'm not actually telling you guys to do anything. Trade your own pan. It's impossible to time the tops and bottoms perfectly. But if you do have funds to deploy and dollar cost average, or actually decide to get long into NIO, you want to be looking at this trend line right here. When things flip back to the bulls, it'll be when this breaks. And I can't tell you exactly when that can break. I'm sorry, my analysis doesn't include timelines, and I can't quite nail down perfectly as to when that will break out. And again, exercising patience is going to be the most important thing here. But if this thing does break down, I think what you can possibly see into next week, maybe you can get it early into the week. It can rise into that 540, 545. And that's where I think you'll see that breakdown in price start. And it kind of does this. That's how I imagine it. Of course, we're gonna have to revisit this week over week and see how this goes. But this is how I see things playing out into next week. Truly. And if I'm wrong on that, keep an eye on this trend line. Okay, because once that breaks, that kind of changes things. And we're pretty close. But what I think what is more likely to happen is it'll come up, it'll kiss that trend line, and it'll reject. And again, I'm not sure if I highlighted it, but we're below the 200-day moving average. Right? Can't be stressed enough that when that happens, price breaks down. And when it breaks back above, that's when you see an improvement in price. And so if we want to see that improvement in price, make sure you're following me on Twitter. I'm gonna drop the tweets. I'm gonna drop the notifications. I'm gonna let you know when that breaks and when that momentum shifts back over for the bulls. For now, I do lean towards more downside with more conviction this week than even last week, due to us not seeing that. And that could be wrong. Just because I was right for the last 3 weeks doesn't mean I'm going to be wrong, and I'm open to that. You got to pick an analysis and you got to pick a direction when it comes to trading, and that's what I believe. And that's why, again, you guys want to do your own due diligence and your own research and make your own decisions. So I'm here to kind of bring you on the same page. But this is what I believe in, and we'll revisit this again into next week. I do have a bit of time here, real quick. I did want to quickly revisit the Dixie. Okay, Dixie's sitting at 100, and to me, I'm just going to invert this so you guys can see this. It's broken out, and it's patience. It's It's kind of building up before that bigger move up. Still looks good from a velocity standpoint of view. It did break above the 200-day moving average, but it did it over here as well. And that's also when it decided to break way lower. So it's still got that setup. I don't want to. This video will get too long if I start diving into the Dixie, but I still like what I see on the Dixie, and it really does support like kind of like a stock melt up. The Hang Seng right here, it's broken out high and it's made a higher high, and it looks super good. This is really good. The speed is supporting that. This thing actually can go way higher. And it's coming up actually into that golden pocket zone. So you definitely want to be paying more attention as it reaches like this 18.7 zone, so another 2.5%. This is likely a zone where it'll probably face some resistance and decide to kind of come right back down and test like, you know, some support. All signs point to higher for NIO, but for next week, I predict lower. And that's going to be a good thing, because that's going to be where smart money is going to want to load up. That's where going to be institutional investors who are going to want to go long, who are going to try and push the stock even higher. And that's also where swing traders are going to be eyeing and trying to get into. And you're going to get a lot of new people joining NIO and a lot of new people talking about NIO. But before that really big move is going to come, things tend to feel, the sentiment tends to shift bearish before you get that. And people tend to question, is this a fake breakout or not? And I think it's pretty clear that this is not a fake breakout. And it's pretty clear that we still haven't gotten a proper pullback. Biggest thing that I'll share with you is keep an eye on those gaps. $4.23, $4.17, and $3.77. Or sorry, it's actually $3.70. Those are all gaps that you got to kind of keep in the back of your mind. It could still fill all of those gaps. I think that 370 is a bit too far, but it's not out of the question. So again, none of that matters. If you're a long-term investor and if your philosophy is to buy and hold, and you're just waiting for it to hit your price targets until it gets there, you shouldn't let the intraday and intra-week price noise bother you. Eventually, it's going to get to where it needs to. It took a year to finally break out. You're not going to see that huge, big move happen in a span of a month. It's going to take time. We're going to get there. It's just going to take time. So that's it. That's my analysis going into next week. I am bearish going into next week, but I think it's going to mark the bottom before you see an even more explosive move higher. If you've enjoyed my video, don't forget to give me the thumbs up. And I have a question for all of you viewers who've watched all the way up until the end. Let me know if you think I'm wrong, and let me know if where you see NIO going into next week, and if you see that there's going to be a bigger pullback, or feel free to tell me I think you're wrong, Blazer, and I think it's going to go to the moon next week. I want to hear that. I want to have a conversation. I appreciate and I enjoy all the comments. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful night and a wonderful week. Cheers and take care.